This is Sylvester Stallone, and you're listening to Movie Thoughts with Dominic Tartamella. Welcome back to another episode of Movie Thoughts. I'm your host, Dominic Tartamella. And as Sly just told us, well, he didn't tell us much anything, but as Sly has introduced the podcast, we are going to be talking about a Sylvester Stallone movie today. He was kind enough to pay his visits to where I record the podcast and do that quick intro. And today we're going to be talking about his new film, Samaritan. This is a Prime Video exclusive on Amazon Prime. Now, listen, Sylvester Stallone, I love Sylvester Stallone. He's one of my favorites. He's, the old school action, action guy. Obviously, Rocky, Rambo, then other films like Demolition Man. He did films like Cobra that were a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But, he's done a little bit of everything. All right, he's done some comedy in there. Not necessarily good. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. He's done films like Oscar back in the day. But who doesn't love Sylvester Stallone? Honestly, guys like him, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, these guys they're kind of like a dying breed. Literally a dying breed. There's just not enough Stallone movies, in my opinion, or Schwarzenegger for that matter. I mean, I wish it's great seeing Sylvester Stallone in a superhero movie. Obviously, he did, or superhero movie or graphic novel based, comic book based. Obviously he did Judge Dredd back in the day. I am the law, and that was what it was. It's enjoyable. Obviously, not as good as the Dredd film that came out a few years back, but it's okay. It's Stallone. Listen, I'll watch anything with Stallone. I'll watch Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. It's not a good movie, but it's Stallone. You gotta enjoy the guy. I mean, he's a legend, and everything he does has some kind of charm because he is in it. Now, that brings us to Samaritan. Is it a good film? Is it shit? It's been getting mixed reviews. I checked it out today, just now. Hot off the presses, just finished it, and I gotta say, I like this one. Overall, I like this one. Now, my bias could be the Stallone bias. I do enjoy the things he does. A movie is definitely elevated if Stallone's in it. So perhaps if it wasn't such an iconic actor to me, I wouldn't have liked it as much. But I did enjoy this movie. It's tricky with superhero movies now because I think we've gotten to the point where we've all seen so many of them. Obviously Marvel has been doing their thing for years. DC has been doing their thing, whatever it is. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's on both fronts, honestly. I'm not going to say that every Marvel movie is perfect. There's some that are great. There's some that are good. And then there's just some that are meh. It's with every movie. So I will say that I enjoyed this film, and not to compare it to Marvel movies, because I don't like to do that, because at the end of the day, these movies and these, just because they're based on comics doesn't mean we need to compare them. But I definitely enjoyed it more than maybe I've enjoyed some of the recent Marvel films. It was good. I mean, Sylvester Stallone obviously is the big name in this film. A few other people I didn't recognize. I know the character playing Cyrus, who is the villain, was in Game of Thrones. He played... what the hell was his name? I'll get it in a second. But yeah, he was in Game of Thrones. He's a guy I like. The actor's name is Pilo Asbæk. I definitely am butchering that. But hey, I can't read too good. What can I say? He's a good actor, though. I did like him in Game of Thrones. And he has a good presence here as a villain. So for those who haven't heard about this movie, I mean, if you've been living under a rock, because I think that Amazon's been really pumping out the trailers and anticipation for this movie. It's about an older superhero. From what I knew on the surface, I didn't really see a lot of trailers because I didn't want to spoil it for myself. But it's about an older superhero who's basically vanished, and he comes back, kind of accidentally, but he comes back. Now that's the simple way to explain the story for anybody interesting. Sylvester Stallone plays that superhero that goes by the name of Samaritan. And yeah, there's some interesting things that happen in this movie. I'm not going to get into spoilers right now. I'll hold off on that. But this movie was fun. I think that, with streaming movies, I don't think they, back in the day, I mean, there's still straight-to-video movies, obviously, but, like, back in the day when you'd see, like, a straight-to-video movie, sometimes streaming movies have that vibe. I think there's a lot of generic movies that come out. I'm not saying they're necessarily the worst movies, but there is a pattern that a lot of these streaming networks do where it's like, all right, get a big star or stars, pay them their money, get an okay screenplay, and make a movie that could pretty much satisfy the masses. A generic movie that's easy to follow the format that maybe Marvel, like I said, uses, or any other action movie. And that's kind of how streaming movies go a lot of the time. I'm not saying every one is like that. Obviously with shows, there's a little bit more to work in when you're having these 10 episode runs or 12 episode runs of a show, like a season of Ozark obviously on Netflix, or Stranger Things. There's a lot more you could do. So the shows is where I think that streaming networks prosper. So when I saw Samaritan, obviously Sylvester Stallone is my draw. Somebody like me who grew up on movies like Rocky and Rambo and fucking Cliffhanger and all that shit. This is a movie that I was going to watch. Now, after seeing it, I could say that there's been worse, in recent years at least, there's been worse Sylvester Stallone movies that have gone to theaters than this. So whether you don't like it or you do like it, like you take a movie like Bullet to the Head that came out a few years ago. I mean, I saw that in theaters with my brother and my father. And that movie was okay. It was kind of a generic action movie. It was still when Sylvester Stallone was riding the wave after Rocky Balboa, and he was kind of back in theaters and making some movies. This is definitely a better movie than that. It's a simple premise. We get some of the mythology out of the way in the first 20 minutes of the movie, where it's explained that Samaritan was a hero and he had a twin brother, Nemesis. So Samaritan was the good one, Nemesis was the bad one. They fought to the death, and they both are believed to have perished. So that's basically what you're working with the mythology. This was based on a graphic novel. I had never heard of the graphic novel. I'm a pretty good comic fan. I never came across it, honestly. So I don't know how popular it is with comic fans, but it was a good story. I liked it. There's a child actor in this movie who's pretty good. He doesn't get, that's the thing with child actors too. Sometimes they get a little annoying. This kid was pretty good. I haven't seen him in anything. His name is Javon Walton, and I'm just skimming through. He's been in Euphoria, The Umbrella Academy, so yeah, I haven't seen him personally, and he's done some voices in The Addams Family. But yeah, he was a good actor. He, like I said, you measure a child actor sometimes by, obviously if they're a good actor, but their level of, how annoying they are sometimes in a movie. And he was good. I could deal with him. This movie's directed by Julius Avery, who, his biggest movies I'm looking at is the movie Overlord, which came out a few years ago. It was produced by J.J. Abrams. I believe Wyatt Russell was in it. I'm trying to think of other people I knew that were in it. Right, and yeah, my boy from this movie, the dude from Game of Thrones, yeah, he was in it. So obviously they have a past relationship where he played Euron Greyjoy, right? So that movie, I didn't love Overlord. Thought it was okay. I haven't revisited it since, seeing it in the theater, but it was a decent little action movie. And he also did a notable movie with Ewan McGregor called Son of a Gun, which I haven't seen, but I've seen many times on Blu-ray on the shelves. But yeah, this was a fun movie. Stallone just brings a charisma to these movies. This guy is not who he is for no reason. So it definitely elevated this film versus, having a generic actor or maybe somebody else with less charisma in the role. There's some funny moments in this movie too, which I like to see Stallone do, because he's good in comedies. I mean, I don't think he really has been as good as somebody like, let's say, Schwarzenegger, who Schwarzenegger really, with movies like Twins and Kindergarten Cop, he knows the beats to hit in a comedy. Whereas, not saying Stallone doesn't. Stallone's funny and could be funny in movies, but he hasn't mastered it like Schwarzenegger. I think somebody like Schwarzenegger, he's in on the joke and he gets it. He gets why his voice is funny. He gets it. But Stallone, man, he does a good job in this movie. It's, like I said, it's fun to see him in a superhero movie. And honestly, it doesn't feel like, as much as these movies get repetitive, superhero movies, and it's all the same shit all the time, it's the same villain, I gotta say, I enjoyed this film. I think as much as, it's not something that's so original, I wasn't really getting bored a lot. There was maybe some parts in the second act where it got a little repetitive. But yeah, good amount of action. Doesn't feel like, barring a scene I'll talk about in a second, doesn't feel like there's a lot of overly, used CGI. Sometimes when you see a lot of these superhero movies, they're fucking CGI fests and everything's CGI. The villain CGI, the hero CGI, the city behind them, they're breaking into the windows of the buildings is CGI, and it just, something gets taken out of it. Like I said, love superhero movies, and when they're good, they're great, but there's definitely something that gets disconnected when you're watching something that is just filmed in a green screen, and everybody was just not even in the same room, the whole cast. So this seems like it was a little bit, not that there wasn't special effects, but it's a little bit more grounded. There's some good fight scenes. There could have been more, honestly, and Stallone is just, listen, there's some good one-liners he says in this movie. He's just a fun guy to watch, saying his lines, and just, this guy's a superstar. So his presence, you gotta love it. But I was surprised, honestly, how much I liked the movie, because I was a little scared with it being an Amazon thing and saying, all right, maybe it's going to be this generic movie. And I was, honestly, the villain, like I said, the guy from Game of Thrones plays Cyrus. He's good. He's fun. He was giving me, I will say, he had a similar fucking coat on to Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. So he was giving me a little bit of Bane vibes in a couple scenes. But I'll owe that to just doing a homage a little bit, the way he was holding his hands on his coat and stuff like that. There are some little twists in this film, or one in particular, and there's some, and like I was saying before, most of the CGI and stuff like that is pretty good. There's a de-age scene. Now, what superhero movie doesn't do a de-age scene nowadays, right? So towards the end of this movie, there is kind of like a flashback. There's some flashbacks earlier, but because of the characters wearing masks and stuff like that, they don't really need to show Stallone. But they do some de-aging towards the end, where it looked a little wonky. I mean, I don't know what the budget was, this will become a continuing habit on this podcast. As I say, I don't know what the budget was, and then I frantically try to look up the budget as I say it. I actually don't even see the budget. I don't know if that's like an Amazon Prime thing showing it, but yeah, so it's not up to Disney and Marvel standards, the de-aging. It looks a little wonky. Sylvester Stallone's got a beard in the scene, and it's like he kind of looks like Rocky IV Sylvester Stallone. Not quite, but it looks a little cartoonish in the scene. But other than that, pretty good movie. This is a movie that I'll probably pick up on like Blu-ray once it comes out. But I definitely would have liked to see this in a theater and seen it with like my brother, seen it with my father, us being Stallone fans, because it was enjoyable. When he's kicking ass, Stallone, and there's a good build up to him basically hiding that he is this Samaritan character. And there's the little funny moments, and then when he finally gets revealed and he's all over the place. And like I said, guy's charismatic as fuck. I mean, there's definitely some good stuff in this movie. Definitely worth a watch, I think, especially being, an old action fan. Like I said, these guys are part of a dying breed. We're very limited how many more Stallone movies we're going to get, how many more Schwarzenegger movies going to get. So, like, when you see these guys, I'll take it. Even like I brought up Bullet to the Head before. Like, I didn't love that movie. It wasn't a movie that blew me away, but it was still fun going to a theater when I saw it and seeing Sylvester Stallone on the big screen kicking people's ass. Same with Arnold. I think one of the first movies he did when he was coming back and stuff was that movie The Last Stand, where he's like a cop. Wasn't a great movie, but like seeing Arnold as a cop shooting people and stuff like that, like, you want that. That's exactly what you want. You get that in this movie, and you get Stallone as a superhero, so he's got super strength. Not that he's not a superhero in Rocky IV or in any of the Rambo movies or in Cobra. Pretty much in a lot of his movies, he's essentially a superhero, with his strength and the way he fights and stuff like that. But now, him actually being a superhero, it's fun to see. It's fun to see him break arms and stab people and then say a stupid one-liner. It's fun. Now, as far as the spoilers, if you've seen this movie and you're listening to this podcast, I'm probably going to get into a couple of spoilers. That's going to happen in 3, 2, 1. So, the big twist of this movie, which I did not see coming, surprisingly, is after the build-up, Samaritan is not Samaritan. Samaritan is actually the bad brother. He's Nemesis, right? So I didn't see this coming. And like I said, I don't know how I didn't see this coming, because this is one of those twists that's been done 100 times, but it caught me off guard. And just the way Stallone, there's a scene, obviously, if you've seen the movie now and you're listening, when he's like, well, you keep calling me the good guy. I'm the bad guy. And that right there was like, that's when I stuck a fork in this movie. And I was like, you know what? I know how I feel about this movie. I enjoy it. Because that's when it really hit me that, like, just that scene, him saying that in the tone he does, it's a fun movie. I liked it. We don't get to see this guy all the time, so when we see him, and especially like he's grown so synonymous with Rocky and Rambo, it's fun to see him in something, and it's fun to see him in something as an older man. Obviously we've seen him as an older Rocky and an older Rambo, but it's fun to see him play this older kind of broken down hero and how he handles the situation. Stallone, what's next for Stallone is the question. I mean, I don't know how I feel about any more Rockies or anything like that. I recently saw that he's having a little bit, excuse the giant trucks that are driving by, he's having some problems with the rights to Rocky. I recently saw there's a problem, and I know Creed 3 is coming out. Apparently he's not involved in that. I don't think he's happy as far as the way that franchise kind of slipped away. His franchise essentially has kind of slipped away from him. But I don't know if I'd really want to see him. I think if people who have seen like Creed 2, I don't know if I'd want to see him coming back as Rocky. I love Rocky. I love all the Rockies. I enjoyed the Creed films as well. But I think there's it gets to a point now where I think we could retire Rocky. I think we've seen it all from Rocky. I think him being older, it's pretty much done. Rambo, I mean, we've seen it all with Rambo as well. I could take one more Rambo movie. I think that Rambo, he could get away with maybe one more. Last I heard, maybe there was a TV series they were working on. I don't know if he was going to be playing Rambo, but Last Blood, it was enjoyable. It was ridiculous. You know, it wasn't, you don't sit there. At this point, you don't sit there watching the Rambo movies thinking they're going to be like the first Rambo. They're not going to be like First Blood. Now they've become this kind of kill 'em all, shoot 'em up action movie. And they've been that way for the last 30 years. So it's nothing new. But it's nice to see him in a different role. Something a little bit different. You know, a little bit like obviously the same in a way, but a little bit different from what he normally does. I could see Sylvester Stallone wanting to do a superhero movie, obviously, because of how popular he's become. I know he popped up in like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. And I'd definitely like to see him more in that world as well. But yeah, I think he does a good job. I think with all the comic book movies that come out, this is definitely, for me, it was one of the more enjoyable ones. Didn't have that taste of generic. Obviously, you're not, don't expect Avengers Endgame. You know, it's not on that level, but it's an enjoyable film. This is one of the more recent movies, too, that I actually was like, maybe I'll see if there's a post-credit scene, because I think I've gotten to the point, too, with post-credit scenes that they've gotten a little bit boring for me, but there, to my surprise, was no post-credit scene. I was thinking they were probably going to have something, because, at first when I believed that he was still the Samaritan character, I figured that the post-credit scene would tease that Nemesis was still alive. But then after finding out that he was Nemesis, I was surprised that there was no scene maybe teasing that Samaritan may still be alive. Because then I got really excited. That's one of those things I got really excited for in the beginning of the movie, because I didn't know a lot about the movie, other than Stallone was in it, other than it was a superhero movie. I tried not to watch too many trailers, but when I saw that the backstory of the history of these two people, the Samaritan and Nemesis, and they were twin brothers, I got really excited because I thought Sylvester Stallone was going to be pulling the Jean-Claude Van Damme and playing two characters simultaneously. I don't know why that made me very excited, but that was something, it now lives in my head because it's something I never knew that I would need, but I would like to see a movie. As ridiculous as it is, I would like to see an action movie where there's two Sylvester Stallones and he's playing two different roles, and now, why not a sequel? I mean, this is my pitch, Amazon, okay? If you stumble across this obscure podcast that just started, and I don't know where Samaritan, the comic book, the graphic novel went as far as storyline, but I'm pitching that Samaritan is still alive. And this might be the case. They might have already did this in the books. But I'm pitching that Sylvester Stallone, Samaritan's still alive, and we get two Sylvester Stallones in the next film, okay? And maybe we even call it Samaritan versus Nemesis, a little bit Batman versus Superman kind of thing. And we get two Sylvester Stallones. I think that would be something that we all need in this world, because there's nothing better than when an action star plays two different characters. I think Jean-Claude Van Damme, I'm pretty sure he did it in 2 movies. I know he did it. What the hell did he do? Double Impact? Is that the one? And then, yeah, so he did it in that one. And that, if you've never seen Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme, I know I'm going off course, but as I've said in previous episodes, this podcast is essentially my brain and what goes on in my brain. It just the things that float around, right? So if you've never seen Double Impact, do yourself a favor, okay? I wish video stores still existed, because this is the perfect movie to actually step into a video store and rent. But go and, I guess, stream it. I guess that's the best way. Go and stream it, find it, search it, buy it, whatever you got to do. Rent it on Amazon, rent it somewhere. Double Impact, okay? Not 1, but 2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes. And the best part is, like, there's a whole backstory where, like, they were separated at birth, and then they find each other. And then when they finally meet, like, this is two guys who look exactly the same. I think one of them maybe has slightly different hair. And they look at each other, and one of them's like, he looks nothing like me. Like, he looks nothing like me. Like, if somebody came, and if somebody came to my house tomorrow and was like, hey, I'm your twin brother, and they were me, I'm going to accept it. Like, in this movie, he's in, like, denial. Like, a guy that looks just like him comes out of the woodwork, and he's still denying it. Like, what kind of sorcery is that? What are you saying? You think this guy doesn't look like you? That's neither here nor there. But there's also, like I said, two Jean-Claude Van Damme movies that he plays twin brothers, okay? Because I can't help but tell you about the second one. And that movie's called Replicant. And that's, I want to say, from the late 90s, early 2000s. And there's a supporting role by Michael Rooker from, Guardians of the Galaxy, Walking Dead. And there's two, and one of them, so they basically, the rest of this podcast that was essentially about Samaritan is now going to become about Jean-Claude Van Damme twin movies. This one's not really a twin movie, though, because what it is Jean-Claude Van Damme plays some kind of a killer, okay? I think he's if I remember correctly, now I haven't watched this in years, but it's burnt into my head because me and my brother used to watch it, and it was so ridiculous. He plays a serial killer, okay? So he's really shown his range in this film. He plays a serial killer. He's got long, greasy hair, and I think he specifically kills mothers. There's something with that. Now, this was obviously a straight-to-video movie, back in the day, and there's just one scene in particular where he's killing one of these mothers, and he's like, "You're bad, mommy." It's a ridiculous movie. But anyway, they clone him. They make a replicant, as they call it, as the title is. And they want to hunt down Jean-Claude Van Damme. So they make this replicant so he could hunt down the bad guy, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And then the best part is, like, he's the clone, or whatever you want to call him, isn't really, like, he doesn't, like, talk at first and stuff like that, if I remember. And he's a little bit, like, dumb. And then you get, like, Michael Rooker yelling at him and stuff like that and not trusting him. And he's, like, this innocent, like, childlike. It's ridiculous, all right? It's in the long run, it's ridiculous. And, yeah, Samaritan's better than both those movies. But, I mean, if you're going to go on a cheese factor, I think they definitely have some more laughs. But yeah, Samaritan 2, let's do it. I'm up for it. I think, do I need 17 Samaritan movies? No, I don't need, Samaritan 6 or Samaritan Balboa. But I think we could do a sequel. I think me and Amazon and, I think we could do a sequel. I think it would be good. 2 Sylvester Stallones. Maybe bring in Schwarzenegger, too. Bring in him. Oh my God. All right. Here's my pitch. Sylvester Stallone. Okay. The other Sylvester Stallone is discovered to be alive. They spend a lot of the movie fighting, obviously. Then Schwarzenegger is a bad guy from their past. They both have to team up and fucking fight and kill Schwarzenegger. That's it. That's the movie. Just contact them now, Amazon. Let's do it. I want to see it. But yeah, Samaritan, I enjoyed it overall. Definitely check it out if you're an action fan. It was like a little bit of a throwback seeing Stallone back in this prominent action role. I wish it would have came out in theaters, honestly. I don't know how Amazon feels about releasing films in theaters. I think they've done limited runs if they wanted something like to be nominated. But this could have been a movie that went to theaters. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But I would have definitely saw it in theaters. And I definitely would see a sequel. I would see a sequel. I'm not like... Listen, this is not the greatest movie in the world. I'm going to say that a lot. But it was a fun time passer. And I can't pass up Stallone. And I definitely can't pass up 2 Stallones. So do that sequel. So check Samaritan out if you have the time. And once you make it a double feature and watch Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And if you like that film, then I highly recommend going to the other one, Replicant. Because they're both starring two Jean-Claude Van Dammes, and you can't really beat that. So let me know what you guys think of Samaritan in the comments. Rate and subscribe if you're liking this podcast. I've been doing this very bare minimum, alright? I'm taking a step back. I love movies. I'm all about the movies. I see way too many movies. But I don't want to be... I've done the YouTube thing. I do the TikTok thing a little bit. Some comedy stuff here and there. But I don't want to be another movie reviewer on TikTok. But I do like to share my thoughts and talk about this stuff. So I figured a podcast is the way to go. If this is your first time listening, definitely, and you enjoyed it, definitely rate and subscribe, whatever you do. I did have another podcast, Genuine Reels, with my brother, where we used to talk about movies, so you could check that out. That still lives in the podcasting world. And you could also find me on Instagram, Dom Solo Reels. You could also find me on Twitter, Genuine Reels. And you can find me on TikTok, Dom Solo Reels, where I do some stupid stuff, and I post some stuff. I do post some movie stuff. I post some comedy stuff, but yeah, we're just getting started right now. So I'm kind of trying to feel it out. Doing some new movies. I want to definitely go back and backtrack and talk about some stuff soon. Definitely going to get a Nope episode soon. Definitely a Top Gun Maverick episode, because I could talk about that one for a little bit. And we're just going to bounce around, obviously, if you've seen the list of episodes, I just did They Live as well, that I just rewatched recently, and I just decided to talk about it for a little bit. Share my thoughts on that film. So check it out. And yeah, if you got any recommendations for movies you think I'd like, let me know. And thanks for listening. See you guys soon.